on your ideologies for the office and
Sure.
and what if elected, what you choose to do as far as your major concerns?
Sure. Yeah, well, we have a crying need for criminal justice reform in this county. We've got a district attorney's office that's nationally notorious for dysfunction and racial discrimination and ethical violations. Out of Tennessee's 95 counties, we're the worst when it comes to prosecutorial misconduct. That's not sharing evidence of innocence with the defendant when you're supposed to, making prejudicial comments in front of the jury when you're not supposed to. We're the first when it comes to racially disproportionate outcomes. We're the worst when it comes to transferring children over to adult court, 95% of whom are Black, which an independent federal court monitor called, quote, a toxic combination for African-American youth, unquote. Meanwhile, at the same time, we're also worse when it comes to crime. Actually, violent crime was relatively low before the current administration took over in 2011, but it's been rising steadily ever since over the last decade, to the point now where we're not just worst in the state, we're worst in the country per capita for violent crime. And I'm not blaming any one person for this. It's a complex problem, but clearly what we've been doing ain't been working, and we need to change. We need reform.
Let me ask you this.
Sure.
Pardon the interruption, but
no, that's fine.
Do you think there's a correlation between the private prison industry and the rise in prosecutions for petty crimes and things of that nature due to monetary incentives?
Yes, because we're providing a corporate profit incentive for warehousing people. You create a private prison with X number of beds, and they get paid per bed that they get filled. They make more money by filling more beds, and that's an incentive for they make political contributions to the decision makers, and suddenly we've got a prison industrial complex.
And that was another point that I wanted to touch on, the occupancy clauses in some of these contracts. How do you feel about that? Do you think that's an illegal clause, or for a private corporation to contract with a state to house prisoners and say that you have to keep this percentage of bodies in these beds or we're going to fine you?
Yeah, I don't know if it's illegal, but it certainly seems to be disturbing as a policy matter, because once again, you're creating a incentive to warehouse people, even where, in a given year, maybe it isn't necessary to send that many people to prison.
Around the country, this is not just a Shelby County issue. This is a nationwide issue. As far as a question I have for you is, would you consider state RICO charges against criminal behavior of these gangs of officers and their unions and supervisors who participate in covering up criminal activity by these officers?
If the evidence suggests that there's an organized effort and involving multiple violations of predicate felonies under a RICO statute, then sure, why not? I'm more familiar with the federal RICO statute, but I do think that we should be considering using every tool at our disposal to handle that kind of organized illegality. As long as the evidence bore it out, there's no reason not to use every available legal tool at our disposal. I think the vast majority of law enforcement people are doing the best they can under difficult and dangerous circumstances. I don't have anything against them. In fact, I think we should be hiring more of them. I think we should be paying them better to recruit them better. And I think we should be training them better. We should be training them more robustly with de-escalation training to reduce excessive force, and implicit bias training to reduce racial profiling, et cetera, et cetera. But, the few bad apples, they have to be prosecuted, vigorously to make sure that we disincentivize the kind of rights violations that we know occur, unfortunately, sadly, all the time.
Yes. Another thing, Title 4D. I'm sure the Title 4D incentivizes states to collect child support. Now, the government kickbacks from Title 4D that states recoup, the monies that they recoup, a lot of poor individuals are being criminalized for not being able to pay. Is that a high priority prosecution for you?
Okay. I was just saying that I don't know an awful lot about it. I probably have to study it further. It doesn't strike me as something that would be a high priority. I will say that, you know, we penalize people who fall behind on child support, other kinds of payments all the time. And when it's not done willfully, when it's just done because they can't afford it, then, you know, I think that bringing the hammer down can sometimes be counterproductive. You know, just to give one example of that, in Tennessee, we're the only state in the union that prevents a former felon from restoring their voting rights because they're behind on their child support payments. I think that law ought to be repealed.
Yes.
Well, you may be interested to know that there's a pending case before the Tennessee Supreme Court right now. It's called the Falls case, Falls. I wrote a friend of the court brief in that case on behalf of law professors across Tennessee. And it deals with the special rules that apply for out-of-state former felons and getting their voting rights restored in Tennessee. As I read the statutes, it is not out-of-state former felon could work with the out-of-state rules. So if the state, you said it was Ohio?
No, Illinois.
Illinois. If Illinois says that you've done everything you need to do to restore your voting rights, and as far as they're concerned, you're eligible for voting rights restoration, that should be the end of it under the state law. Tennessee should not be allowed to say, well, plus you also got to pay up on fine and fees and be up to date on your child support in order to get your fundamental right to vote restored. And that's a case that's pending right now before the Tennessee Supreme Court.
Okay, that's a good look. You know, we need more of those friends of the court briefs addressing these issues. So I commend you for that.
Thank you.
You know, we've seen what the last 8 years of the Shelby County District Attorney have done. And there's a lot of questionable things, a lot of questionable prosecutions. If elected, how do you hold your subordinates accountable for things of the nature of withholding exculpatory evidence?
Anybody who violates the professional rules of responsibility in district attorney's office, if I were lucky enough to become DA, would be held accountable. You know, we wouldn't give anyone a free pass for violating the rules of evidence, and that goes double for Brady, disclosing evidence of innocence, because that's a fundamental constitutional right. You know, I know that in Amy Wyrick's office, there's been a record number of such kind of violations, and some of the high-profile people who, you know, were really in serious violation got no disciplinary action. I'd handle these things very differently. I think the message needs to go down throughout everybody in the office that the ethical rules are to be taken very seriously, and if you cross them, then there's going to be a price to pay.
Okay. Speaking on the Brady issue, I think one of the questions I had was, would you be willing to put the Brady list, Shelby County's Brady list, into a searchable database for attorneys?
Yeah, I mean, I think I need to think about that. I think so. I think I'm a believer in as much transparency as possible. And so, you know, if we have information about past violations, I think that should be something that's available to the public. You know, exactly what kind of information and how we would redact it to, you know, protect privacy interests, I think is something that I'd have to think about going forward. But in general, I think I am in agreement with what you're saying. So I think, you know, you're onto something there.
Yeah.
I will just tell you in general, in terms of transparency, one of the things that I favor is the creation of a user-friendly dashboard on the DA's website that would be comprehensive. Would keep track of cases filed, charges, dispositions, the race of the defendant, victim, arresting officer, in, you know, robust detail that will be available for journalists and criminal justice reformers and the public at large to search through the dashboard on the website so that they could track in real time our progress. You know, are we doing better with racially disproportionate outcomes, or worse, or the same? I think the kind of transparency will help the public and other stakeholders and holding us accountable. And I think if they hold us accountable, then everybody wins.
And transparency is where reform starts. So again, I applaud you
Agreed.
for those ideas. And we're rooting for you. We hope you can get in there.
Thank you.
And you know, implement change.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate this opportunity. You have a good day now.
You too. Thank you for your time.